My name is Marissa Hale. I'm 40. And for 5 years my body quietly fell apart while the man I trusted most, my husband, Dr. Adrian Hale, a celebrated GI surgeon, kept insisting it was women's stress, weight dropping, nails splitting, bruises with no reason, nausea that came like tides. And every time I asked, Adrian smiled that calm doctor smile and said, "Sweetheart, it's hormonal. Just rest more." I believed him. He controlled every test, every explanation, every specialist I was allowed to see. He told our friends I was run down, sensitive, high-strung after 40. Quote, "But the day I almost fainted in the grocery aisle and a walk-in clinic PA studied my labs with widening eyes, everything changed." Before we continue, tell me where you're watching this story from, and hit follow on my channel. We believe life never has just one chapter, and sometimes the most important one begins at the very moment you think you've run out of options. Now, back to the story. For a long time I thought my body was just quitting on me. Not all at once. Slowly, quietly, like someone dimming a light on a dimmer switch instead of flipping it off. For years, I was tired in a way sleep didn't fix. I dropped weight without trying. My hair thinned, my nails cracked. My heart would race when I walked from my desk to the copier. Food turned on me, bloating, cramping, waves of nausea that made me dread mealtimes. I work in a small insurance office off Route 66, the kind of place where people decorate their cubicles with cactus-shaped mugs and pictures from the Grand Canyon. I used to be one of those people, the woman who brought homemade brownies to the break room and signed up for every birthday lunch. Then my body started shrinking, and my world followed. "Stress," my husband would say, kissing the top of my head as he pushed a glass of water toward me. "Women your age? Hormonal changes. Perimenopause. You sit too long. You don't sleep enough. You live on coffee." His name is Dr. Adrian Hale. In Flagstaff, that name still means something. He's a laparoscopic GI surgeon, tiny incisions, big results. Patients call him a miracle worker. Nurses say he has magic hands. Those hands have repaired perforated ulcers at 3 in the morning, taken out gallbladders through slits you can cover with a fingertip, pulled people back from the brink. I've watched his patients hug him in the grocery store, tears in their eyes, thanking him for giving them their lives back. It's a special kind of hell to realize the same person might be quietly taking yours. At first, I clung to his explanations. You want to believe the specialist, especially when he's your husband. He ordered my labs himself. Mild anemia. A little low on vitamin D. Electrolytes, acceptable, he said. He prescribed light sleeping pills, just to reset your cycle, a proton pump inhibitor, for that burning you keep mentioning, over-the-counter supplements shoved into my hands as he breeze swept through his own kitchen like he was on rounds. "Try those," he'd say. "Cut back on the coffee, walk more, and for God's sake, don't Google things, Marissa. You'll just scare yourself. If Brett too mine." But when I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror one morning, collarbones too sharp, cheeks hollowed, hair limp and thinning, I felt something inside me clench. In that moment, I realized I was more afraid of trusting him than of being dramatic. My heart kept racing. My period faded to a whisper. Bruises appeared on my thighs and arms from the gentlest taps against door frames. Coworkers started asking if I was doing okay in that careful tone that means you look like a ghost, and I don't know how to say it. "Adrian," I whispered one night, my voice catching. "This doesn't feel like stress. I feel like I'm disappearing." He didn't even look up from his laptop. "Babe, we've talked about this. Stress wrecks the gut. You know what I do all day? I see what this stuff does to people. You're not dying. You're tired. We'll adjust your meds." Then he finally looked at me. The way you look at a child who's scared of the dark. "Don't make a big thing out of this, okay?" The message was clear. If I looked for help elsewhere, I'd be betraying him not just as a doctor, but as a husband. For a long time, that was enough to keep me quiet. Adrian left for a 3-day GI conference in Boston in early October. He kissed my forehead at the airport curb, told me not to live on instant ramen while he was gone, and rolled his carry-on toward the sliding doors like any other business traveler. The second his figure disappeared into the crowd, my heart started pounding so hard I felt lightheaded. For the first time in years, I was truly alone with my own judgment. I sat in the car with the engine off, phone in my lap, staring at the windshield. My fingers shook as I typed gastroenterologist near me Flagstaff into the browser. A list of names popped up. My eyes snagged on one, Dr. Ethan Reyes, Gastroenterology and Hepatology, Northern Arizona Medical Center. Not in Adrian's private network. Hospital-based, good reviews. I dialed. Gastroenterology clinic, this is Jenna. Hi, my name is Marissa Hale, I said. My husband is a surgeon. He's been managing my care, but I'm not getting better. I'm losing weight. I have chronic diarrhea, nausea, fatigue. I know you're probably booked, but can you be here in an hour? She cut in gently. You sound like you shouldn't wait. My throat tightened. I agreed, hung up, and pulled out of the airport lot, the morning sun glinting off the snow-capped San Francisco peaks in the distance. As I drove toward the hospital, I felt guilty, disloyal, terrified. And underneath all that, something else. A thin, stubborn thread of relief. For the first time in a very long time, I was doing something Adrian had not orchestrated. Dr. Ethan Reyes was not what I expected. He was younger than Adrian, late 42s maybe. Salt and pepper beard, dark eyes that took everything in without making you feel pinned to the exam table. His office walls were lined with medical diagrams and a framed photo of the Grand Canyon at sunrise. He flipped through the labs I'd brought, the ones Adrian had printed for me from his clinic system. His brow furrowed slightly. He asked questions my husband never had. How long have you had trouble tolerating solid food? Any history of inflammatory bowel disease in your family? Matter 5. How many times a night are you waking up to use the bathroom? He listened. Really listened. When I told him my husband was a GI surgeon, something flickered across his face, but he didn't comment. Let's start from scratch, he said finally. I want to see your current labs, and then I want imaging. CT of the abdomen, maybe MR enterography if we need it, and I'd like to scope you upper and lower. Your symptoms and weight loss are red flags, Miss Hale. I'm scared, I admitted. Good, he said bluntly. Fear gets people to the doctor. You're here. That's what matters. His bluntness weirdly calmed me. They drew my blood right there. Hours later, I was lying in a CT scanner, eyes closed, listening to the machine whir over me. My veins burned with contrast dye. My heart tapped out a stuttering rhythm in my chest. The next morning, I came back for endoscopy and colonoscopy under light anesthesia. I remember the cold of the IV, the anesthesiologist's gloved hand on my wrist, the smell of antiseptic. A nurse tucked a warm blanket around my legs. Think of somewhere you love, she said, as the meds began to pull me under. I thought of the aspen trees off Snowbowl Road in fall, leaves flickering gold like coins in the wind, then black. I woke up to the sound of paper rustling and a low voice. It took me a moment to realize it was my name. Marissa? I blinked. The recovery room came into focus, curtains, monitors, that hospital smell of plastic and cleaning solution. Dr. Reyes was standing beside my bed, still in scrubs, a tablet in his hands. He wasn't smiling. Something deep in my gut went cold. I need to ask you a very direct question, he said. Has anyone ever performed any kind of bypass surgery on you? Weight loss surgery, small bowel resection, anything like that? I frowned. My throat was dry, and my tongue felt thick. No, I croaked. Just my gallbladder removal. 7 years ago. At my husband's surgery center. His jaw tensed. That's the only abdominal surgery you've ever had? He pressed. Yes, I said. Why? What did you see? He tapped the tablet and turned the screen toward me. It showed an image from the CT scan, a cross-section of my abdomen. He zoomed in on a loop of small intestine. Here, he said quietly. This segment of jejunum, see that line? That's a staple line. That doesn't belong in a simple cholecystectomy. You have a side-to-side anastomosis, forming what we call a loop bypass. It's diverting a significant portion of your nutrients away from the normal absorption pathway. It's bected Hafa. I stared at the image. Not fully understanding, only recognizing one terrible truth. Someone had altered my insides without my knowledge. That's surgery? I whispered. Like, extra surgery? Yes, he said. And it's old. The adhesion pattern, the scarring, it's been there for years. We saw it clearly on the CT yesterday, and I confirmed it during the scope. The mucosa downstream looks severely atrophic. That's why you're malnourished. For a second, the room tilted sideways. No, I said reflexively. I would remember. My husband would have told me. Adrian would have. Marissa. His voice cut through my denial. This is not normal anatomy. Someone surgically created this bypass, and they did it without documenting it in any record I've seen so far. He picked up a printed copy of my outside operative note, the one I'd brought from Adrian's center. This is your gallbladder op report, he said. 7 years ago at Hale Digestive Center. It reads, laparoscopic cholecystectomy with minor adhesiolysis. Nothing about a bypass, but your intestines don't lie. I felt nauseated in a way that had nothing to do with anesthesia. What does that mean? I whispered. For me? It means, he said carefully, you've been living with an unauthorized bypass that's slowly starving you. It also means you're at risk of acute complications, perforation, severe electrolyte imbalance, even cardiac arrest if this continues. I want to admit you today and schedule exploratory surgery with my partner, Dr. Vivian Beaumont, as soon as we can get an OR. I swallowed, my mouth suddenly desert dry. And the other part, he added, his gaze meeting mine. If this was done without your informed consent, during another procedure, and then hidden in the record, that's not just malpractice, that's potentially a crime. The word crime landed like a physical blow. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I clutched the blanket with shaking hands, trying to anchor myself. In that moment, something inside me shifted. For the first time, I let myself look full in the face of the thought I'd been shoving away. What if Adrian hadn't just been wrong? What if he'd been lying? 2 days later, I was in the operating room at Northern Arizona Medical Center, bright lights glaring down on me like interrogators. Machines beeped in steady rhythms, cool air brushed my skin where the paper gown ended. Dr. Reyes squeezed my hand before they rolled me under the lights. Vivian's one of the best, he said. We're going to find out exactly what's going on, okay? I nodded, tears slipping sideways into my hair. The anesthesiologist spoke. The world narrowed, and then blackness swallowed me. When I woke, my abdomen burned. Not the diffuse ache I'd lived with for years, but a sharper, heavier pain, wrapped in the embrace of tight bandages. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp. Machines hummed softly. My mouth felt like sandpaper. Hey, I turned my head. A woman in her 50s with iron-gray hair pulled back in a bun sat in the chair beside my bed, still in blue scrubs. Her face was lined, her eyes steady. I'm Dr. Beaumont, she said. Vivian, you made it through surgery just fine. Tears pricked my eyes with relief. Did you find it? I rasped. Oh, we found it, she said grimly. And we documented everything. She pulled her chair closer. What you had, she said, was a mini bypass loop connecting 2 segments of your jejunum. It was fashioned with a very distinctive suturing technique, 3-throw, cross-lock pattern on the outer layer, with a double-running inner line. I've only seen that exact pattern once before in a video your husband presented at an ASGE conference a couple of years back, demonstrating his signature approach to complex small bowel anastomoses. I stared at her, ice spreading through my chest. You're sure? I whispered. I don't say this lightly, she said. We took high-resolution intraoperative photos. We measured the staple lines. The age of the adhesions matches the timing of your gallbladder surgery. The tissue around the bypass showed chronic villous atrophy. Your absorptive surface was essentially scarred flat in places. This wasn't some incidental, life-saving measure. It was an intentional bypass. And whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. Tears blurred the edges of my vision. Why? My voice broke on the word. Why would anyone do that to me? Vivian's gaze softened, but her voice stayed firm. I can't tell you the why, she said. That's for investigators and for him to answer. What I can tell you is what it did. We sent samples to pathology. Preliminary results show severe chronic inflammation, marked malabsorption, iron deficiency anemia, and protein-calorie malnutrition. If this had continued another year or 2, I'd be talking to you about organ failure and hospice, not recovery. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. So I couldn't say Adrian's name. He's been... What? Slowly killing me? Vivian held my gaze. In my medical opinion, she said, This was not a mistake. It was a covert procedure done during another surgery, undocumented, using a non-approved bypass pattern that's been effectively abandoned because of its complication rate. We reversed the loop, restored continuity as best we could. You'll need careful nutritional support and monitoring, but your body has a shot. She paused. And before you ask, yes, the hospital has already notified law enforcement. Detective Kara Kirkland walked into my room the next morning with the kind of presence that made the air feel more solid. She was maybe late 30s, brown skin, hair in a tight bun, blazer over a simple blouse. She flashed a badge, then set it on the bedside tray beside my untouched gelatin. "Miss Hale," she said, "I'm Detective Kirkland with the Flagstaff Police Department. How are you feeling?" "Like a truck hit me," I said. "But alive, that's a good start." She pulled a chair up to the bed and sat, opening a slim notebook. "I'm here because the hospital reported potential criminal conduct involving your prior surgery. I know you're exhausted, but the sooner we get some details, the better." I nodded, my hands twisting the edge of the blanket. "I need to ask you some specific questions," she said. "First, aside from this recent surgery, when was the last time you were under general anesthesia?" 7 years ago, I said, "when I had my gallbladder removed, at Hale Digestive Center, my husband's facility." "Walk me through that," she said, pen poised. "Who scheduled it? Who was present? What do you remember about being consented?" "ADIM." I stared at the ceiling, forcing my mind back. Adrian had said my gallbladder was a ticking time bomb after one bad attack. He'd insisted his center was safer than the hospital, that he could oversee every detail. I remembered signing something on a clipboard while already in a gown, his hand on my shoulder. "You trust me, right?" he'd murmured. "This is routine. I could do it in my sleep." Now, under the harsh fluorescent lights of memory, that phrase made my skin crawl. "I don't remember anyone saying bypass or intestinal surgery," I told Kara. "Just gallbladder. Minor adhesions, maybe." He joked that I'd be home in time to watch Netflix. She jotted notes, her face unreadable. "The operative report we pulled from his center," she said, "lists exactly what you just said. Laparoscopic cholecystectomy, minor adhesiolysis. No mention of any small bowel work. But the imaging and intraoperative photos from this week show a bypass that's been there for years." She flipped a page. "We also obtained the archived OR video from your gallbladder surgery," she continued. "All procedures at Hale Digestive Center are supposed to be continuously recorded. In your file, there's a 14-minute gap, a blackout. The deletion was performed months ago using an administrator-level login traced to one of the staff accounts overseen by your husband." I felt my stomach lurch. "So he had the opportunity," I said, barely above a whisper. "He had total control." "He had the facility," she said. "He had the authority. And he had your unconscious body and abdomen open in front of him." Her eyes met mine. "Marissa, I want you to hear this clearly. If he performed an unauthorized bypass on you without informed consent, knowing the long-term risks, and concealed it, that's not just battery. Given your current condition and the pathology findings, the district attorney is already looking at attempted murder." The phrase hung in the air between us, surreal and heavy. Attempted murder. I swallowed hard, feeling the IV tug at my skin. "Can you think of any reason," Kara asked softly, "why your husband would want you progressively sicker over time rather than abruptly dead? Any financial, personal, or professional motive that would make a slow decline convenient?" The question sliced through me. Images flashed. Adrian refusing to talk about kids because we don't have the savings for that, even as his practice expanded. His offhand comments about divorce law in Arizona, the way he always framed my declining health as my own weakness, my bad habits. "I don't know," I said, tears burning my eyes. "But I'm starting to think I was the last one he wanted healthy." I support. 3 days after surgery, as my body fought to adjust to its new reality, pathology results came back in full. Dr. Beaumont stood at the foot of my bed with a tablet. Kara stood to the side, arms folded. "Good news first," Vivian said. "We reversed the bypass successfully. Your latest labs already show small improvements in protein levels. It's going to be a long climb, months of monitored refeeding, supplements, maybe central line nutrition for a bit, but your body is responding." I exhaled shakily. And the rest? I asked. She glanced at Kara, then back at me. Histology of the bypass segment shows chronic inflammatory changes, severe villus atrophy, and iron deposits. We're looking at years of underabsorption. The pattern is consistent with long-term surgically induced malabsorption, not any natural disease process. In plain English? Kara said, looking at me. In plain English, Vivian said. This wasn't something your body did to itself. It was done to you. My throat tightened. If this had gone on much longer, she continued, your risk for catastrophic complications, sepsis, heart failure, would have skyrocketed. Frankly, you're lucky you sought another opinion when you did. Lucky. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Vivian left, and Kara switched from observer to cop again. With these results, she said, we're moving forward. I've already served subpoenas on Hale Digestive Center for surgical logs, device inventories, and digital records. We'll also be taking a look at your husband's financials and any communications that might shed light on motive. She hesitated. I'm going to ask something that's going to hurt, she said softly. Are you prepared for the possibility that we'll uncover other betrayals, affairs, financial secrets? Things that will make this feel even worse before it gets better? It's brassed. I thought about the way I defended Adrian at dinner parties whenever anyone hinted surgeons could be arrogant. The way I'd bragged about his outcomes, his skill, his gifted hands. In that moment, I finally understood that the man I thought I knew was already gone. Do what you have to do, I said. I'd rather be floored by the truth than comforted by lies. I was discharged on the 5th day after surgery with a stack of instructions. Small, frequent meals, protein shakes, weekly labs, follow-ups with both Vivian and Ethan. I moved like an old woman, hunched and careful, my abdomen tender, every step a negotiation with pain. Kara met me in the hospital lobby before I left. We got some of the records, she said, walking with me toward the exit. There are inconsistencies in the suture inventory logs. A particular lot CC 821 shows as rear-processed and disposed around the time of your gallbladder surgery. That same lot number showed up on the packaging we photographed in your abdomen. Meaning? I asked. Meaning, she said. Somebody recorded that suture set as destroyed when, in reality, it ended up inside of you. She held the door open. The crisp mountain air hit my face. I've got a warrant to search Hale Digestive Center, and soon you're home, she added. But before we go storming in with my entire team, there's something you can do that I can't. 2A's. What's that? I asked. Walk into that clinic as his wife, she said. While he's not there. See what he thought was safe to keep around. Just don't take anything. Photos only. Let me worry about seizing the originals. The thought of stepping into Adrian's world made my stomach coil. But the thought of doing nothing was worse. Hale Digestive Center sat in a glass-fronted building just off I-40, all brushed steel and tasteful rock landscaping. I'd brought muffins to its staff lounge more times than I could count. I'd helped pick out the waiting room art. Now, as I walked in with a hospital discharge bracelet still on my wrist, the lobby felt colder. The receptionist, a college kid with a nose ring, looked up, startled. Mrs. Hale, she said. I thought Dr. Hale said you were. I didn't think you'd be up and about. Adrian's at the hospital today, I said smoothly. Years of being a surgeon's wife had trained my voice to sound effortless even when I was breaking inside. He asked me to grab something from his office for him. Is that okay? She hesitated, then nodded. Sure. You know where it is. Of course I did. I'd spent anniversaries waiting there for him to finish charting. His private office was just as I remembered. Mahogany desk, degrees on the wall, a framed photo of us at Lake Powell, his white coat hanging on the back of his chair. But it all felt staged now, a set more than a room. I closed the door behind me and moved quickly. Kara had given me a crash course in what to look for. Safes, logbooks, anything marked inventory or device disposal. The safe was behind the framed Lake Powell photo. I knew the combination. Our anniversary. That fact made me want to laugh and scream at the same time. Inside, among business documents and a velvet box with cufflinks, was a thick binder labeled Ore Inventory, 2015-2022. My hands shook as I flipped through the neatly ruled pages, each line a record of sutures, staplers, scopes going in and out of the OR. March, 7 years ago. My eyes caught on an entry, 3/18. Suture set number CC 821. Triple lock cross set, marked, defective. Reprocess, dispose, signed A. Hale. My breath hitched. CC 821. The same code Kara had mentioned. The same kind of suture Vivian said had been used in my bypass. He'd logged it as defective, then signed off on its destruction. Instead, he'd used it on me. I pulled out my phone and snapped photo after photo. The page, the signature, surrounding entries to show context. My pulse roared in my ears. The office door creaked open. I spun around, clutching the binder. A woman stood in the doorway, wearing navy scrubs and a badge that read Hannah Price, RN. She had long blonde hair, pulled into a ponytail, and tired eyes. On her hip, balanced with casual familiarity, was a little boy of about 6, his arms wrapped around her neck, his sneakers dangling against her thigh. I'd seen Hannah before, in passing at Christmas parties, at the hospital cafeteria when Adrian dragged me along. I'd never seen the boy. "Mrs. Hale?" she said, clearly startled. I didn't know you were coming by." Her gaze flicked to the open safe, to the binder in my hands. "Adrian's not here right now," she added quickly. "He's on call at the hospital." "I know," I said. "I just needed something from his files." My attention snagged on the necklace around her throat, a small silver compass pendant with a tiny diamond at the center. I had one just like it, tucked into a jewelry box at home, the You're My True North gift Adrian had given me for our 10th anniversary. The boy on her hip looked up at me with big brown eyes that seemed horribly familiar. "Is that your son?" I asked, my voice sounding far away to my own ears. Hannah shifted him a little, protective. "This is Eli," she said cautiously. "We were just dropping off some paperwork for your husband. He, helps with his school stuff sometimes." "It's not as wa." A muscle in my cheek twitched. "Helps," I repeated. "Like he helps you with your condo in Sedona?" Her eyes widened. "How do you—" The center's front door chimed faintly down the hall. A patient's voice, a nurse's laugh. Life going on, oblivious. Hannah's gaze darted away. "Adrian's just generous," she said. "He said his wife was dealing with chronic illness, that you weren't really present anymore, that he stayed because he didn't want to abandon you. But he needed somewhere he could breathe, someone who understood him." The words hit me harder than any physical blow. "I'm guessing he told you I was unstable," I said, my voice sharpening. "That I refused treatment. That I was what? Crazy?" Her face crumpled slightly. "He said your labs were bad," she murmured. "That you were wasting away and refused surgery. That you didn't want help. He said he didn't think you'd be with us much longer. That he had to think about Eli's future." Eli. My stomach lurched at the familiarity of the name. The boy buried his face in her neck, overwhelmed by the tension. "How long?" I asked. "How long has he been helping with your future?" She swallowed. "I met him 6 years ago," she said. "I was new on the GI floor. He helped me with my divorce, with Eli's daycare. A couple years later, he helped me get the condo. He said he couldn't leave you until things ran their course, that it would look bad, divorcing a sick wife, that he had to be careful with his reputation." There it was. The motive, laid bare in fluorescent-lit, linoleum-floored clarity. As she spoke, something inside me finally snapped out of denial. In that moment, I realized I had been living in a parallel universe, one where I was the shadow, and this nurse and her son were the real family Adrian was arranging his life around. My fingers tightened around the binder, crinkling the plastic. "How many children does he have?" I asked, my voice unnervingly calm. "Just Eli? Or are there more I should know about?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Just him," she whispered. "He calls him Buddy. He said once," she cut herself off, biting her lip. "What did he say?" I pressed. "That Eli was his second chance." Her voice trembled. "That you were too damaged to start over." His words, not mine. I swear to God, Mrs. Hale, I never would have. A knock on the half-open office door interrupted her. The clinic's security guard, Jeff, leaned in, phone in hand. "Everything okay in here?" he asked, his eyes moving between us. "Dr. Hale just called. He sounded concerned. Said his wife might be dropping by and that we should keep an eye on things." Translation. He was afraid of what I might see. My time was up. I snapped a few more photos of the logbook, closed it, and slid it back into the safe. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped it. I was just leaving, I told Jeff. Hannah shifted Eli off her hip and onto the floor. He clung to her scrub pants, peeking around her leg at me. "I'm sorry," she blurted as I walked past. "I didn't know. About the surgery. About what he did to you. I swear, I thought. You thought he was a good man in a bad situation," I said. "I know the feeling." I stepped out into the sharp autumn air, my hospital bracelet catching the sunlight. My phone buzzed in my hand. Detective Kirkland lit up on the screen. "Tell me you found something," she said when I answered. "Oh, I found something," I replied, staring back at the glass facade that hid my husband's secrets. I found the life he built while he was starving me. Back home, the house felt wrong. The entryway bench where Adrian dumped his keys, the gallery wall of vacation photos, the leather couch where we'd watched Netflix while I sipped broth and he ate takeout. I went straight to his home office, ignoring the ache in my abdomen. His laptop sat on the desk, screen dark. He'd always been weirdly casual about security at home, relying on convenience over paranoia. The fingerprint sensor accepted my touch. We'd set them both up when the laptop was new. The desktop was neat folders for research articles, billing, marketing. One folder's icon was faded, slightly transparent, tucked between others in a way that might escape a casual glance. Second wind. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. I double-clicked. Images filled the screen. Adrian on a hiking trail in Sedona, arms around Hannah and Eli, red rocks blazing behind them. Adrian in a Christmas sweater, holding Eli on his shoulders as the boy reached to put a star on a tree I'd never seen. Adrian and Hannah on a beach somewhere, her head on his shoulder, both of them barefoot in the surf. Photo after photo after photo. My husband's smile in all of them, bright, unburdened, the smile he hadn't worn at home in years. My vision went hot and blurry. I clicked into a subfolder labeled Docs, PDFs and Scans. A mortgage agreement for a condo in Sedona. Owner, Hannah Price. Co-signer, Adrian L. Hale. Automatic payments from an account Adrian had never mentioned. Insurance policies naming Eli as beneficiary. 529 college savings plans. And emails. So many emails. I opened one at random. From Adrian Hale to Hannah Price. Subject: Re. She's not doing well. Don't worry, sweetheart. The labs are trending down just like we knew they would. Natural decline is cleaner than lawyers. No ugly court battles, no alimony fights. When things resolve themselves, custody will be simple. The bypass did what it needed to do. I read the sentence, "The bypass did what it needed to do," over and over until the words stopped being language and became a physical weight on my chest. Another email. From Adrian Hale to Hannah Price. Subject: Re. Condo paperwork. Once she's gone, weeks, months, whatever, we'll sell the Flagstaff house. You and Eli move in here full-time, or we buy somewhere bigger. I can't file while she's still technically recovering. It'll make me look like a monster. Better for everyone if nature takes its course. She refuses to eat, refuses to follow my advice. No one can blame me for that. Refuses to eat. I thought about all the nights I'd thrown up broth and protein shakes while he patted my back and told me I was too anxious about food. How he'd mocked me gently for Googling symptoms, warned me I'd turn myself into a diagnosis. In that moment, I finally understood that every reassurance, every eye roll, every "stop being dramatic" had been part of a plan. My hands shook as I plugged a flash drive into the laptop. I copied the entire second wind folder. Progress bar crawling, my pulse pounding. My phone buzzed. "Kara again. I was just about to call you," I said, my voice hoarse. "Beat you to it," she replied. "We got full pathology back." "Beaumont already talked to you?" "Yeah," I said. She used phrases like, "years of induced malabsorption and organ failure if continued." "Well, the DA saw those words and upgraded the charges we're preparing," Kara said. "We're moving toward attempted first-degree murder, plus aggravated assault and falsifying medical records." I stared at the progress bar, 92%. "He wrote it down," I said, "in emails. He literally typed out that the bypass did what it needed to do. Those were his exact words. Kara was silent for a beat. "Marissa, I need you to step away from the computer," she said. "Right now. We've got a warrant for the house scheduled for early tomorrow morning, but if he gets home before then and realizes what you've found, he may try to wipe everything. Or worse." I swallowed. "He's in Boston," I said automatically, then paused. "At least, I think he is." "Conferences end early, flights get changed," she said. "I'm on my way with a team. Just don't touch anything else." The progress bar hit 100%. I yanked the flash drive out, my breath coming shallow and fast. I tucked it into my sports bra, against my skin, like a talisman. I closed the laptop, but left it open on the desk, the second wind folder still on screen. If he was going to see the truth, I wanted it to hit him full force. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water I wasn't sure I'd be able to swallow, and leaned against the counter, staring at the front door. Within 15 minutes, I heard it. The jingle of keys, the rattle of the deadbolt. My heart tried to climb out of my throat. "Marissa?" Adrian's voice floated in, warm and familiar. "Babe? I got an earlier flight. Figured I'd surprise you." My hands clenched around the glass. He walked into the kitchen with a paper bag of Italian takeout in one hand and a bouquet of lilies in the other, the same lilies he used to bring me when I couldn't keep food down. "Look," he said, smiling, setting the bag on the counter. "Your favorite fettuccine Alfredo. You'll just push around your plate while I eat it, right?" He laughed. The sound made my skin crawl. "Office," I said, my voice flat. "Now." His smile faltered. "Marissa, what?" "Now," I repeated. Something in my tone must have reached him, because he set the flowers down slowly and walked toward the hallway. He stopped dead in the doorway of his office. From the kitchen, I could picture exactly what he was seeing. His laptop open, the second wind folder full of photos of him, Hannah, and Eli still on screen. I followed him, my footsteps silent on the carpet. He turned to me, his face ashen. "What are you doing on my computer?" he demanded. That's private. You have no right." I walked past him, clicked an email, and stepped aside so he could read it. His own words stared back at him. The bypass did what it needed to do. Natural decline is cleaner than divorce. All the color drained from his face. "You," he stammered. "You don't understand. That's taken out of context. I was under a lot of stress, okay? Patients, the center, the conference circuit." I reached into my hoodie pocket and pulled out a glossy photo. One of Vivian's intraoperative shots of my intestines, the reversed bypass line clearly visible, the old staple line glaring like a scar. "Is this also out of context?" I asked quietly. He flinched. "Marissa," he said, his voice dropping into that soothing register he used on anxious patients. "Listen to me. That bypass saved your life. Your labs were terrible years ago. You had subclinical disease. I did what I had to do to protect you. You don't remember because we didn't want to scare you." "We?" I repeated. "Who is we, Adrian? You and the nurse you bought a condo for? You and the second family you built while you were slowly starving me?" He swallowed, his eyes darting toward the hallway as if mapping escape routes. "You're not well," he said. "You're fresh out of surgery. You're emotional. Of course all this feels dramatic, but there are nuances you don't understand. You Googling things and talking to cops instead of to me is—" "Stop!" My voice cracked like ice. I held up the photo between us. "You cut my intestines to create a bypass I never agreed to. You documented nothing. Then you falsified the record and deleted part of the OR video. You wrote emails about waiting for me to die so you could avoid divorce court. Tell me which part of that is nuance." His composure tore. "You were ruining my life," he snapped. "For years, you made everything about your symptoms, your fatigue, your gut feelings. You wouldn't eat. You wouldn't exercise. You turned into this shell." I was drowning, trying to hold everything together. I just nudged what nature was already doing. "By performing secret surgery," I said, "on your unconscious wife." His jaw clenched. "It was a corrective measure," he insisted. "Your gallbladder was a mess, your labs." "Don't," I said, my voice low and shaking. "Don't you dare stand in this room and pretend you cut into me for my own good." He stepped toward me, hand reaching for the photo. "Give me that," he said. "You're not thinking clearly." I stepped back. Stay away from me. His mask finally slipped. You have no idea what you're doing, he spat. You're going to ruin everything. The center, my career, people depend on me. You think the cops are going to understand complex surgical decisions? They're going to twist it, and you're letting them. Oh, they already have plenty to work with, came a calm voice from the hallway. We both turned. Detective Kara Kirkland stood in the doorway with 2 uniformed officers behind her. Dr. Adrian Hale, she said evenly, stepping into the office. You are under arrest for attempted murder, aggravated assault, and falsification of medical records. You have the right to remain silent. Adrian's face went slack. You can't be serious, he sputtered. This is insane. I'm a respected surgeon. You can't just… She's mentally compromised. She's a malnourished postoperative patient. She doesn't know what she's seeing. Kara's expression didn't change. We have intraoperative photos, pathological evidence, altered metadata, or video gaps, financial records, and your own emails, she said. And that's before we even talk about the suture log your wife photographed today. She nodded at one of the officers, who moved forward with handcuffs. Adrian backed away, his hands raised. Marissa, he pleaded, turning toward me as the officer took his arm. Tell them you don't want this. We can fix it. I'll call the best nutritionists, the best therapists. We'll say it was a miscommunication, an informed consent issue. Don't burn our whole life down over one misstep. One misstep? My voice rose, then broke. You carved a bypass into me like I was a lab experiment. You watched me fade for years and called it nature taking its course. You built a future with another woman and her son while you waited for my body to give up. This isn't a misstep, Adrian. This is who you are. His shoulders slumped. Kara finished reading his rights as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. From the front hall came the sound of the door opening again, hurried footsteps, a choked voice. Adrian? The guard at the clinic called me. He said the police were headed to your house. What is… Hannah stopped short in the doorway, her gaze ricocheting from the handcuffs to my pale face to the open laptop. Jesus, she whispered. What did you do? Adrian looked at her, something desperate in his eyes. Nothing, he said quickly. They're blowing things out of proportion. I was trying to help her, she's confused. Kara turned to Hannah. Miss Price, she said. I'm Detective Kirkland. We'll need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement. Voluntarily would be best, but we can do this the hard way if we have to. Hannah swallowed, her eyes filling. He told me she was dying, she said, staring at Adrian as if seeing him for the first time. He said you refused treatment, that you wanted to go natural, that I was selfish for wanting him to move on. I didn't know he did something to you. Oh my God. Adrian jerked against the officer's grip. Don't say anything, he snapped. Hannah, for God's sake. You said it was stress, she choked. You said you'd done everything you could as a husband and a doctor. You told me she barely left the bed. I did what I had to do, Adrian hissed. For all of us. Kara raised an eyebrow. Thank you, Dr. Hale, she said. That's plenty for now. They led him down the hall. His shoes squeaked faintly on the hardwood. The lilies on the kitchen counter filled the air with a cloying sweetness that made me want to gag. Hannah lingered, wringing her hands. I am so sorry, she said, tears tracking down her face. I didn't mean to, I thought. You thought he was the victim. I finished for her. I know the feeling. She nodded miserably. What happens now? She asked. To Eli? To everything? You take care of your son, I said quietly. And you tell the truth. Kara reappeared in the doorway. Miss Price, she said gently. We really do need to go. The sooner you give your statement, the sooner you can get back to your kid. Hannah wiped her face, nodded, and followed her out. Then the house was silent. Just me, the faint ticking of the thermostat, and the ghosts of 15 years of my life. I walked back into the office, stepping over the lilies Adrian had knocked to the floor in the struggle. Petals were scattered across the carpet like drops of red and white confetti at the ruins of a celebration. For a long time, I just stood there, my hands hanging at my sides, feeling empty and painfully, terribly awake. In that moment, I finally understood that whatever marriage we'd had was already over years before the cuffs clicked shut. What had been carried out of my house just then wasn't my husband. It was the stranger who'd been wearing his face. The trial didn't happen overnight. Nothing in the justice system ever does. There were months of subpoenas, depositions, motions. I sat through meetings with prosecutors, victim advocates, forensic specialists. I answered the same questions until the answers felt like they belonged to someone else. Every time I lifted my shirt to show a new doctor the scars on my abdomen, it felt like I was exposing more than skin. By the time the case finally went to court, winter had given way to spring, then summer, then fall again. My hair had begun to thicken. I'd gained back 20 pounds. My labs, as Ethan liked to say, had stopped screaming. I haven't. The morning of the first day of trial, I walked up the steps of the Coconino County Courthouse with my hand on the rail, flanked by my attorney and a victim advocate. The Arizona sky was a hard, high blue. News vans cluttered the curb. Satellite dishes angled skyward. GI surgeon accused of poisoning wife, the headlines had said. Apparently, even small cities love big scandals. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Reporters scribbled, cameras clicked, until the judge threatened to clear the room. I sat in the front row, near the prosecutor's table, my palms damp against the fabric of my skirt. Adrian entered in a suit instead of scrubs, escorted by deputies. He looked smaller. The arrogance that once filled every room he walked into had folded inward. His hair was thinner. His face had a grayish cast. For a fleeting second, I saw the man I'd married, the one who'd danced with me in our tiny first apartment, who'd cheered when I got my promotion, who'd kissed my forehead on 1,000 mornings. Then I remembered the emails. The bypass. The compass necklace around another woman's throat. Whatever softness there had been was gone. He sat at the defense table, jaw clenched, eyes fixed somewhere just beyond the judge's bench. The prosecutor, a woman named Collins, stood and addressed the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "this is not a case about a bad outcome or an honest mistake. This is a case about power, betrayal, and a deliberate act of violence committed under the guise of medical care." She laid it all out like a story. The secret bypass, the OR video gap, the falsified record, the financial trail. Each fact landed with a quiet, devastating thud. Then it was time for the witnesses. Hannah went first. She took the stand in a simple dress, a tissue clutched in one hand. She looked older than the last time I'd seen her, as if the truth had aged her. "Please describe your relationship with the defendant," Collins said. Hannah's voice shook, but she didn't look away from Adrian. "I met him when I started as a nurse at the hospital," she said. "I was 23. He helped me with some continuing ed stuff, then with my divorce. He started coming by my apartment, seeing Eli." Her testimony spilled out like a confession. He'd told her I was mentally unstable, that I refused treatment, that I barely functioned, that he stayed with me out of obligation, not love, that once I passed, he'd finally be free to be honest. "How did he describe Miss Hale's health?" Collins asked. "He said she was fading," Hannah whispered. "He said her labs were bad, that she wouldn't follow his advice, that he'd done everything he could, but nature was winning. He mentioned," she swallowed, "he mentioned that something he'd done in a previous surgery meant she wouldn't be around forever, that a natural decline was cleaner than divorce." "And did he ever mention the word bypass?" Collins asked. "Yes," Hannah said. "Once, after a conference. He said he wished he'd done a cleaner version, because watching it play out was messy." Those were his words. The defense tried to paint her as a jilted mistress, eager for revenge. She held steady. "I loved him," she said simply. "But I loved a man I thought was compassionate and trapped. That man doesn't exist. If I'd known he did something like this, I never would have stayed." Next came Dr. Reyes. He testified about the CT, the anastomosis, the initial shock of seeing a bypass where no bypass should be. He explained the difference between medically indicated small bowel surgery and what he'd found in me. "This was not in response to an emergent pathology," he said. "It was an unauthorized alteration of normal anatomy. Covert. There is no legitimate reason for that to happen without informed consent." Then Dr. Beaumont took the stand. She showed the intraoperative photos to the jury on a large monitor. My insides on display, pink and vulnerable. It should have made me feel exposed. Instead, it felt like vindication. She pointed out the triple lock cross suture pattern, referencing Adrian's own conference footage. "In your expert opinion," Collins asked, Who likely performed this bypass? Dr. Hale, Vivian replied without hesitation. The timing, the technique, the lack of documentation, it all points in one direction. A digital forensics expert testified about the altered metadata on the original gallbladder OP note. The fact that it had been edited 8 months before my collapse, not 7 years ago. He showed how the OR video file had a clean, untouched record. Then a 14-minute deletion performed from an admin account during a late-night session traced to Adrian's home IP address. Finally, it was my turn. My legs felt rubbery as I walked to the stand. I placed my hand on the Bible, then sat, the microphone too close, amplifying my shaky breath. "Miss Hale," Colin said gently, "can you tell the jury how your symptoms started?" So I did. I talked about the fatigue, the weight loss, the bruises, about the way my world shrank to the size of a couch cushion, how every attempt to advocate for myself was gently, expertly batted away. He'd pat my hand and say, "Stress," I told them. He'd call it women's hormones. He'd write me prescriptions for sleeping pills and antacids, and if I ever hinted I wanted another opinion, he'd get hurt. He'd say, "Don't you trust me? This is literally what I do." My voice stayed mostly steady, but when I described waking up from surgery and seeing my insides on a tablet screen, I felt my throat close. "For 5 years," I said, "I felt crazy. Every instinct I had told me something was wrong. Every authority I had access to told me I was being dramatic. That combination is deadly." I looked at the jurors, almost all of them women and men old enough to have had a scare or two with their own bodies. "The most painful part isn't the physical stuff," I said, my voice cracking for the first time. "It's realizing that the person you sleep beside, the person you hand your body over to in absolute vulnerability, looked at that trust and saw an opportunity." The courtroom was so quiet I could hear someone sniffle 3 rows back. The defense tried to chip away at me. "Miss Hale," Adrian's attorney said, "is it possible that your husband discussed a more extensive surgery with you when you were on pre-op medications that impaired your memory?" "No," I replied. "I remember every word of him telling me it was routine. I would remember if he'd said, 'Oh, by the way, I might rearrange your intestines.'" He tried to suggest I'd refused legitimate treatments, that my non-compliance forced Adrian's hand. "I refused to be quietly walked off a cliff," I said. "If that counts as non-compliance, then yes." Adrian himself declined to testify. He sat at the defense table, eyes down, hands clenched. Watching him like that, small and cornered, I felt nothing. No pity, no love. Just relief that he no longer had the power to shape the narrative. The judge's instructions to the jury were long and careful. Attempted murder required intent. They had to weigh emails, actions, omissions. They disappeared into the deliberation room with stacks of exhibits. Hours passed. I paced the hallway, sat on a bench, paced again. Ethan sat beside me for a while, his hand on my back, anchoring me. "For the first time," I told him, "I feel like my body and my story are in the same place." He squeezed gently. When the jury finally filed back in, my heart was beating so hard I thought I might throw up. The 4-person stood. "On the charge of attempted first-degree murder," he read, "we find the defendant, Adrian Lewis Hale, guilty." My vision blurred. "On the charge of aggravated assault resulting in serious physical injury, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of falsifying medical records, guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, guilty." The list felt endless. Each guilty was a tiny stone laid back into the foundation of my reality. Judge Ramirez, stern, composed, pronounced the sentence. 8 years in the Arizona Department of Corrections, she said. Permanent revocation of your medical license. Restitution for the victim's past and future medical expenses. A no-contact order prohibiting any attempt to reach Miss Hale directly or indirectly. 8 years. It didn't feel like enough for what he'd done, but it was something concrete. A line drawn. A public statement that what happened to me was real, and it was wrong. They led him away in shackles. He didn't look at me as he passed. I didn't look at him. For the first time in a very long time, my body felt like it belonged only to me. 1 year later, I stood in a backyard in Flagstaff, barefoot in the grass, wearing an ivory dress that didn't slide off my gaunt shoulders because I wasn't gaunt anymore. It was a mild late summer evening. String lights zigzagged over the lawn, casting a warm glow on the faces of the few people gathered. Ethan's sister, a couple of our friends, my therapist, a social worker who'd helped me through the hardest parts. The air smelled like pine and grilled corn. Somewhere beyond the fence, a dog barked. The peaks were silhouettes against a pinkening sky. "Mom, your hair looks like a princess," Harper declared solemnly. She was 7, with freckles across her nose and a cowlick that refused to be tamed. Her dress was pale yellow, and she clutched a basket of rose petals like it contained all the secrets of the universe. "Yours too," I said, smoothing a hand over her wild ponytail. 6 months earlier, a judge had signed the papers making her my daughter. She'd spent half her life bouncing between placements after her mom died of complications from an autoimmune disease no one had caught early enough. The first time she'd seen the scars on my stomach, she'd traced them with a gentle finger and asked, "Did somebody hurt you like they hurt my mom?" "No," I'd told her. "Somebody hurt me, and I survived. There's a difference." Now, as she scattered petals along the makeshift aisle between the picnic tables, she hummed a little tune under her breath, utterly focused. Ethan waited at the end of the aisle, wearing a slate blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up, his tie slightly crooked. When our eyes met, something warm and steady settled in my chest. He'd walked through every crappy step of my recovery with me, arguing with insurance companies, sitting with me at 2 a.m. When my gut rebelled, celebrating my first normal lab panel like it was a lottery win. Somewhere between surgical follow-ups and shared coffee runs and slow walks on the urban trail, we'd crossed an invisible line. One night, sitting on his porch watching a thunderstorm roll across the desert, his hand had slipped over mine. For the first time in a long time, I'd thought, this touch doesn't come with conditions. Our vows that evening in the backyard were simple. Nothing about obey, everything about listen and tell the truth, even when it's ugly. Harper stood between us, holding both our hands as the friend officiating pronounced us married. When Ethan leaned in to kiss me, she made an exaggerated gagging noise, then laughed, her small body shaking against my hip. Later, after the cake was cut and the guests had drifted home, after Harper had fallen asleep on the couch surrounded by wrapping paper and tissue, I slipped out onto the tiny back deck. The string lights buzzed gently. Crickets sang. The air was cool against my bare arms. I rested a hand over the faint ridge of scar that traced my abdomen, feeling the steady, unremarkable churn of digestion beneath my fingertips. Once, those scars had felt like a map of someone else's intentions on my skin. Now, they felt like proof. Proof that I'd been engineered toward an early grave and had walked myself back. Ethan slid the screen door open and stepped out beside me, handing me a mug of chamomile tea. "Thinking heavy thoughts?" he asked quietly. "Thinking true thoughts," I said. "Which is new." He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. I leaned into him, my cheek brushing against the fabric of his shirt, breathing in laundry detergent and the faint scent of hospital on his skin. "For a long time," I said softly, "I thought love meant trusting someone even when my body screamed the opposite. I thought loyalty meant letting someone else narrate my reality." "And now?" he asked. "Now I know," I said, "that the fiercest kind of love is the kind you give yourself when you say, 'I believe my own pain. I believe my own eyes. I will not let anyone turn me into a prop in their story, even if they wear a white coat and a wedding band.'" We stood there in silence, listening to the wind in the pines. Inside, Harper snored softly, sprawled sideways across the couch, one hand still clutching a crumpled ribbon. A cartoon paused mid-frame on the TV cast blue light across her sleeping face. The life I'd built, once polished, respectable, slowly lethal, was gone. In its place was something messier and infinitely more alive. A rented house that smelled like crayons and coffee, a mismatched family held together not by appearances, but by choice. Life can be brutal. It can take the very people who swore to protect you and turn them into the ones you need protection from. But standing there on that deck, under a sky so wide it made my chest ache, I understood something I hadn't been able to see from the middle of the wreckage. Ruin isn't just an ending. Sometimes it's a foundation. He tried to starve me out of my own life. I lived. I testified. I healed. And I built a future he never imagined I'd be here to see. If there's anything I hope someone takes from my story, it's this. Listen to that quiet, insistent voice inside you, the one that says, Something is wrong, even when everyone around you insists you're fine. That voice is not your enemy. It might just be the part of you that survives. And your intuition is not an overreaction. It's the first and fiercest guardian of your truth.